Welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Wi-Fi battle. It's your boy, Daddymac, and today we are up against Tristan, bringing a Sneasler. That is absolutely scary. Now, if you missed the last Wi-Fi battle, you do not want to miss out. It is a recorded over session, so I'm actually commentating events that have already happened. So it's not completely live. I forgot to hit the unmute button on my microphone, and I basically have content that doesn't have a voiceover. It's literally just the content, and it's my camera with my lips moving and no sound actually coming out. So yeah, here I'm actually just checking my Ogerpon's not ability, what's the word I'm looking for? Nature, forgive me. So yeah, Tristan is bringing a scary team. I absolutely know he's gonna start with the Grimmsnarl. I'm like automatically looking at his team composition. This is probably a dual screens Grimmsnarl with Prankster. And the biggest threat in his team is absolutely A, Cinderace, B, well, in order, A, Sneasler, B, Cinderace, and C, Gengar, and a little bit of Grimmsnarl for obvious reasons. Grimmsnarl fits somewhere in there, so yeah. It's Tristan versus Alvin. Subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Wi-Fi battles. Typically what we do is we do live Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Wi-Fi battles. So things are looking a little bit different for this specific Wi-Fi battle. Nevertheless, my opponent does start with the Grimmsnarl, just as was predicted. And I'm like, you know what? We got the Ogerpon theme coming in. We know we are gonna win this. So we feel good. All right. So here, I'm basically like, all right, Grimmsnarl comes out. That is perfect. The first thing you're going to set up is your screens. Now, do I want to go for a Mortal Spin or do I want to set up my Stealth Rock? At the end of the day, I'm like, Stealth Rock is a little bit more important to me right now. So I'm going to set up my Stealth Rock. You know, my opponent is probably going to switch a lot considering his screen setter is a Grimmsnarl. Next, you might probably parting shot me or whatever, but I'm going to go ahead and hit a Mortal Spin. So my opponent plays it smart. They don't parting shot. They instead hit the Reflect because they recognize that, at least from a team preview standpoint, my team has a lot of physical attackers. So they hit me with the Reflect. Now I'm like, all right, you probably might hit me with the parting shot. I don't know what you're gonna hit me with. Regardless of the matter, I'm pretty happy I hit the Mortal Spin, and I'm kind of looking at his team. I'm like, what are you gonna switch into? I'm a little scared right now. I don't know if I want a Power Gem. I don't know if I want an Earth Power. I don't know what I want to do. So here I'm checking my speed IVs. I'm like, EVs. I'm like, do I outspeed? Am I fully invested in speed? Am I fully invested in special attack? I completely am. And I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go ahead and hit whatever comes in. Carlos comes out, who is the Poliwrath, and I'm like, yo, hold up a minute. This is actually kind of scary because got the screens up. This thing with a what's the belly drum or even a bulk up could be really scary. It would be even scarier in the rain. So I'm like, please don't have rain dance. Please don't have belly drum. Please don't have all of these attacks because I'm scared. I do outspeed it. I go out into the Earth Power. I'm like, I'm just gonna stay in because I got the Focus Sash. My opponent does hit me with the Liquidation. Surprisingly, it doesn't one-shot me. And my opponent does trigger Toxic Debris, so I got one layer of spikes up, and I'm like, all right, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and stay in because at this point, if he hits me with another physical attack, I'm gonna set up a second layer of spikes. There's no harm in doing that. Actually, I don't stay in. I do decide to switch it. My apologies. I actually recorded this and I did not study the footage. I'm just recording as to what's happening here because I remember this Wi-Fi battle, but there's certain areas that I don't remember. So I actually go into the Corviknight, my defensive Pokemon. So it kind of hits me with Liquidation, fix its Citrus Berry, and I'm like, why didn't you go out into the Belly Drum? Why didn't you hit me with the Belly Drum and then start attacking me? You got two screens up for sakes. So I'm like, all right, this is actually kind of perfect. I do not want to roost here because if I do happen to be faster than you, which I highly doubt, I'm ultimately going to get hit with the super effective Drain Punch. And I'm kind of studying. I'm like, all right, how much turns of Reflect has it been? Because I can probably stall out this Poliwrath. So I decided to stay in. I simply body press. I'm like, this isn't going to do anything, but I really have to hone in and focus on, you know, reducing the turns of Reflect and Light Screen. So unbeknownst to me, my opponent hits me with a Circle Throw, and I'm like, yo, that was interesting. Dragapult comes out, which is actually perfect because I do resist the water type attack and I am immune to the fighting type attack. And I'm like, all right, this is perfect. I do fear his other Pokemon in the back though, and I really don't want to stay into the Dragapult. So I'm gonna go ahead and U-turn, and this thing lives. This thing lives because not only is it bulky, also my opponent's got the reflect on the light screen. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and U-turn and I'm gonna go out into the Corviknight because it's gonna knock itself out to Rocky Helmet, and I kind of burn another turn of the reflect on the light screen, and my opponent does hit me with the liquidation. I'm about a little over 50% HP, and I'm like, all right, depending on what comes out, I can probably roost pretty comfortably and just continue to stall the reflect on the light screen. So that's the plan. This is the plan. I'm like, all right, I kind of have to play strategically against this reflect and this light screen, and Corviknight is honestly bailing us out big time. Cinderace comes out. This is the worst switch-in for us because obviously we are completely prone to a Pyro Ball here, and I'm like, all right, now I got to deal with the Cinderace. What do I want to do? I actually think I go out into the Glimmora and sack it off. If I don't go into Glimmora, I probably go into the Ogerpon, but kind of really analyzing my thought process, I hope I go out into the Glimmora. I remember I go out into the Glimmora, but I don't remember at what point because I ultimately end up getting 2 layers of spikes going, which is perfect, aside from the fact that my opponent has the spikes. I accidentally clicked run. I did not mean to click run, so don't you guys think that I just quit my battles, okay? That's not what we do around here. We stick it out, we upload wins, we upload losses, we upload draws, all of that. Now, I'm still thinking, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go out into the Glimmora, and just like I said, Glimmora is the perfect plan because if we get hit with the Pyro Ball, it is a physical attack. It's gonna trigger my Toxic Debris, and I got 2 layers of spikes going. So we kind of sack off Glimmora here, and I'm actually surprised. I live this attack, and I'm like, yo, I was not expecting that. So Toxic Debris does happen, and I'm kind of hoping. I think I actually pulled up some speed calculators, and I think I didn't outspeed. Actually, I don't outspeed. I was hoping I would outspeed, but Glimmora ultimately does go down here. I decide to just, go down here. Trailblaze comes out. That's like worst case scenario too, because now we got a Cinderace that not only threatens my team, the light screen and the reflect is up, but also now it's at +1 speed. I'm like, this thing is going to jack my team up if I do not do something here. So I'm like, all right, reflect wears off. This is actually a perfect opportunity for us to just go out into the King Gambit and sucker punch this bad boy. I'm kind of scattered brain here. I'm like panicking because now the Cinderace is at +1. Lucky for me though, the reflect is gone, but still, I'm like, Cinderace can take down my Corviknight, it can take down King Gambit, and then Ogerpon. Actually, I think I go out into the Ogerpon, if I'm not mistaken. I go out into the Ogerpon or the King Gambit. I don't remember who I would go out into. It turns out to be Ogerpon. The reason behind that is because I felt neutral. I was like, all right, I should be able to take a Pyro Ball. It's neutral. Yeah, so I decided to go out into the Ogerpon. If it U-turns me, it U-turns me. That's perfectly fine. But I really got to try to force this thing out of here. And I'm like, I'm just going to Ivy Cudgel. I know it just hit me with the Trailblaze, but Ivy Cudgel is probably the best attack I got against this thing. So just like I predicted, my opponent does go out into the U-turn, and I do take that. And thank goodness it is not a crit here. So I'm like, I'm simply going to just hit it with an Ivy Cudgel. My opponent does go out into the Basil, who is the Lurantis, and now you are badly poisoned. You take stealth rock damage. You do all of that stuff. And you're gonna take an Ivy Cudgel. This thing actually takes the Ivy Cudgel pretty comfortably too. It does some pretty decent damage. Regardless of the matter, I'm like, all right, you're at somewhat low HP. I feel pretty good about the another Ivy Cudgel considering how much damage the first one did. And sure enough, it does knock it off. I got pretty lucky there, to be honest, because I do believe that first one was a high roll. I have not run any calculators or anything like that, but just kind of looking at it, I'm like, I did a little bit too much for it not to be very effective. So Amber comes out, and this is the Sneasler, and I'm like, automatic panic mode. My poison spikes go away. This thing has got Unburden, probably normal gem fake out. I'm like, Dragapult has to be my switch in here. I'm gonna go into the Dragapult. I do not want this thing to hit me with a close combat in case it got the Power Herb. You did not know that strategy, now you do. I don't want to deal with the fake out normal gem combo, and it going into the fake out kind of confirms to me that it is Unburden normal gem, and I'm like, all right, as long as I keep Dragapult in, I think I am okay. So Dragapult doesn't, I think Dragapult actually outspeeds a normal unboosted Sneasler. So I'm like, here I feel pretty good just staying in and smacking this thing with a flamethrower. And here I was kind of hoping for something else, who is not the Grimmsnarl, to come in, or not the Grimmsnarl, the Gengar. And I'm like, all right, he disables me. That's like worst case scenario. I decide to switch out. This is where the momentum of this battle switches. I go out into the King Gambit. My opponent does not trick me, okay? Don't you expect a trick here. What he does is he hits me with the T-Wave, and I'm like, yo, I don't like that. I don't like being paralyzed with the King Gambit, because now that means my Sucker Punch is actually not very effective. It's not as effective as I want it to be, because now I can go down if I get the paralysis. You know, if I get paralyzed and I cannot hit whatever. So I go Sucker Punch here. My opponent reads me like a book. He's like 2 steps ahead of me. He hits me with the Toxic Spikes, and I'm like, all right, I don't got a poison type Pokemon. These Toxic Spikes are here to stay. So I'm like, all right, you got to go out into another set of spikes, or you're gonna go ahead and do something else. And here he hits me with an Encore, and I'm like, bro, my momentum went from 100 to 0 in just one turn here. With one switch in and a perfectly timed Thunder Wave, my King Gambit is basically worthless. And I'm like, all right, I don't want to switch out, but I feel like I am in a position where I have to, and this is where I'm kind of analyzing my options. Part of me also wanted to stay in and just continue to Sucker Punch here, because mostly because this thing doesn't really threaten the Grimmsnarl. I was not expecting for him to run Focus Blast considering his set. I mean, he's revealed Toxic Spikes, revealed the Thunder Wave. This leads me to believe that he does not have a Focus Blast. So I'm going to continue to stay in, and I'm just going to continue to Sucker Punch. You can set up whatever spikes you want. You can set up whatever you want. The only thing I did fear was a substitute. But thank goodness my opponent does not have a substitute. Instead, they switch out. They go back out into the Amber, who is this Sneasler. And I'm like, this is, I can go out into the Dragapult again if I really want to. My Encore does end, and I think I panic a little bit, and I don't remember if I go Dragapult or I go Corviknight, but I remember I go Dragapult here. I'm not going to spoil anything quite yet, but this Sneasler kind of puts me in a very, very tough predicament here. So I go back into the Dragapult. Unfortunately for me, Dragapult does get poisoned. My opponent does decide to go out for another, actually they go Dire Claw, and that's, I'm like, okay, that's decent, you know. I was like, Fake Out. I was expecting a Fake Out. He didn't go out to the Fake Out. I'm like, okay, that's not the worst thing in the world, but it's also not cool that I took a Dire Claw to the face. So here I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go ahead and hit this thing with a flamethrower in case Grimmsnarl wants to come out again. And sure enough, you know, my opponent does switch out and goes out into the Grimace, who is once again the Gengar here. And you know, it does live even after the Stealth Rock. We're gonna go ahead and take it out with a flamethrower. And things get a little bit trickier here. I'm like, all right, Grimace kind of did all the damage it needed to do. So him sacking off the Gengar made complete sense. And I'm kind of cornered here, because if Sneasler comes out again, it can hit me with another Dire Claw. I'm taking damage here, and I'm not sitting comfortably, so I'm a little bit nervous. My opponent does go into the Thug Shaker, who is the Grimmsnarl. I'm like, all right, you're probably going to set up your Reflect and stuff like that again. So I'm gonna go ahead and Flamethrower. It actually takes this Flamethrower, and that's because it's fully invested in HP. Hits me with the Spirit Break, and I'm like, I should have absolutely switched out. Now I got no protection against Fake Out, and you know what that means. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but I think you can see the foreshadowing happen. Grimmsnarl is taking some damage. I'm like, all right, this is, I gotta prepare for the Sneasler, because it's basically gonna get an unburden on me. I'm gonna go out into the King Gambit. I understand Sneasler can probably knock me out more than likely with a close combat here, but I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and just stay in, and I'm gonna go ahead and Iron Head, because yeah, you can set up your Reflect if you want to, but I really have to put some pressure onto the Thug Shaker, because I don't want him to set up Light Screen and Reflect. If I got to choose against one of them, I only want one set of screen set up. So I go Iron Head. We do knock out, because this thing is absolutely whittled down at this point, and obviously super effective King Gambit. is going to knock out a Grimmsnarl. All right, this is where things get a little bit tricky for me. So my opponent is going to go out into Caden, who is a Cinderace. I was completely expecting for him to go out into the Sneasler. And I'm like, all right, he's absolutely putting pressure on me with A, U-turn, B, Pyro Ball. He's shown the Trailblaze, so if he wants to hit me with that again, he totally can. My only attack is to go into the Sucker Punch here. And I'm like, if I get paralyzed, it's the worst thing in the world. By the way, it's a crit. I know that was a little bit of a late reaction, but that's what happens when we're kind of doing this type of thing, you know? So I was really confused as to why they go out into the Caden, and I'm like, all right, I don't want this thing to do anything else. My best attack is just to simply hit it with a Sucker Punch. So here, Fake Out does, you know, trigger the normal gem, and this thing is unburdened. And I'm like, okay, what do I do here? Because this thing is outspeeding everything it wants to outspeed, and hits me at the close combat. I decided to go to Sucker Punch because I wanted to get some kind of chip damage on this. I would rather do 1 HP of damage than not. So Sucker Punch successfully hits. Paralysis doesn't really play a big factor in this specific Wi-Fi battle, but now I'm like, all right, Corviknight is my best bet because A, I am immune to poison, and B, I am absolutely afraid of the close combat, but a regular close combat should not knock us out. It's just faster, it's not stronger. My opponent does decide to Terastallize here. And I'm like, this is actually pretty bad, but it turns out that this is actually a Terra Poison. And I'm like, all right, that's actually not too bad. I can deal with the Terra Poison. I was actually afraid for this thing to be like Terra Fire or something and just knock me out with a Terra Blast. So they go into the close combat, and just like I predicted, I do live this. I actually take this as an opportunity to just roost, and I'm like, all right, if I can take a close combat here, I should be able to just spam roost and let this thing knock itself out with a Rocky Helmet chip damage, as long as I do not get critted. And goes for close combat again. Now it's at -2 defense. I go ahead and roost again, and I'm like, all right, I think this is a wrap, right? It's got to be a wrap. I'm gonna roost. My opponent's just gonna knock itself out with the Rocky Helmet and kind of go from there. So I'm actually really thankful my opponent was not running Terra Fire or Terra Electric or something like that with the Terra Blast. That would have been absolutely bonkers if they prepared for Corviknight that way. That would have been next level play, team building type of stuff right there. So yeah, honestly guys, this is a wrap at this point. I'm like, all right, there's no way this thing is going to knock us out. I'm gonna body press here, and sure enough, we get rid of the Hisuian Sneasler. So yeah, this Wi-Fi battle was definitely tricky. It felt one-sided for a good chunk of the Wi-Fi battle, and then Gengar kind of just threw everything out of proportion, started obliterating me, and we came back. I mean, not really a comeback because we had to lead regardless, but yeah, it was a good Wi-Fi battle. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Wi-Fi battles. Moving forward, we're gonna have live reactions, live Wi-Fi battles like we have been doing in the channel before. Things are just a little bit different right now because I forgot to unmute my microphone. But that's it for this Wi-Fi battle. It's your boy Daddymac. I'll see you guys next time.